Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, where we explore the journeys of exceptional individuals who have achieved remarkable success in their fields. Whether you're an aspiring athlete, a business leader, or simply someone striving to reach your full potential, this podcast is your guide to unlocking the greatness within you. Join us as we dive into inspiring stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts that can transform your path to greatness. Let's embark on this journey together. Hey, welcome back to the Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester. This one's one for the books. It's one of my favorites, but maybe one of the most challenging episodes that I've had to put together. And as a public speaker, many times they say, do not reveal the challenges that you have because the audience doesn't know, nor should they know. But I just got to give you a little heads up about this one. Because we talk about resilience and gratefulness throughout the entire episodes, both halves. And we started the episode originally, and there was a delay when I hit start. So when you hit record on Riverside, then there's a countdown and off you go. Well, mine was hung at 1 for probably about 10 seconds. I should have learned from that I should have just hit stop and start over, but I didn't. I just continued on because it looked like on my end that it ended up catching up. Well, when I watched it back, it didn't. There was about a 10-second crossover. It was an absolute mess. So as we were recording, again, I'm thinking everything's working. Then all of a sudden, my power cuts out. Entire house, the whole neighborhood, no power for like 4 hours. So graciously enough, Coach Huebner, who has an extremely busy schedule between his coaching the program, but then also he's running a camp that is, when you listen to this one, it just happened about a week and a half ago, with a ton of people, a ton of players coming in. I think it's anywhere between 200 and 300 high school players coming in. So a lot of things that he's having to get done. Plus he had been displaced out of his office, all this stuff. So stopped in the middle of the episode. So then when I went to replay it, like I just shared, there was a big delay. So I'm grateful because I have a neighbor, Tony Leps, who is a wizard because it's his day job with video and audio. And so he was able to take the download from Riverside and match it. So the first half of this episode was a disaster and Tony fixed it. So I'm so grateful for that. And then we started to record the second half, and it originally attempted through Riverside, had challenges there. So then just had to switch over to Zoom. So this thing's all over the place. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, you're going to see one, we're in different clothes, and then it's different formats. So my hope is, even if the audio levels are different, that you can not get hung up on some of the aesthetics that you have with podcast, but power through, because the information that Coach Huebner shares is gold. Now, I would also encourage you, if you did not listen to his first episode, please go listen to his first episode. It's one of the episodes of all the ones that I've done that has had the most impact on me with certain tidbits. And one of those is just having positive gossip. This world is full of negative gossip, and just reinforce that. And this episode continues to have a lot, and I could go through all the different tidbits since it's fresh in my mind. The one thing that really jumps out at me right now is don't live life in safe mode because you made a mistake. And he'll go over that because he's in the throes of the recruiting season. And just, we talk about what does he look for in players and how does he look? And I ask those questions because as parents, as leaders in the workplace, as leaders in our community, because we're all leaders, it's just whether or not you choose to view yourself as that or not, we can take these valuable lessons. And for me, it's safe mode. And I'm not going to go into it. I've rambled long enough as an intro, but I know that you're going to enjoy this one. So please listen all the way to the end because there's so much valuable information. So ladies and gentlemen, Coach Jeff Huebner.
So everybody, this is Coach Jeff Huebner. I had him on back in, I believe, March of this past year. So you're one of the first double appearance guests, especially the first in the same year.
Awesome. That was what I was hoping for. That was on my list of goals for the year. And so we're crushing it. It's perfect.
There you go. There you go. And we may have a third within 2025. You just never know.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, but thank you for coming back. I know it's a crazy time of year for you. It's that recruiting season has kicked in. June 15th is that special day for all the rising sophomore or rising juniors that they can be contacted. So, and then club season's over, which means camp season has begun for you. So it's got to be nonstop in South Florida right now.
Oh yeah, we got basically 10 days to get ready for 350 kids. So we're excited for the opportunity. We're just glad that we have so many people who, honestly just want to be on our campus and get to experience what God's doing here in our program, but also just, all the construction sounds and all of the housing commitments and all the pieces that are like just floating around as like the busyness of late summer really kicks in before season starts. So it's been great. We're really excited.
Yeah. And you're not new to this. So
no.
For those who may not have heard the first episode, I highly encourage you to go back because it's one that impacted me. I've shared it with anybody and everybody that I can think of because of a lot of the gems that came out of that are really life altering in the sense of just how to perceive life. One of the big things that I enjoyed, Coach, was around positive gossip. I have told that story to anybody and everybody that would hear. So I know today's not going to be a disappointment either.
Well, I hope to live up to it.
You will. Okay. So as I told him before we got started, is since I've already had him on and we've already had the fun questions that we do up front, the would you rathers, I changed it up a little bit. So these are unique to you. I've never asked these to anybody else. So these could just fall flat on our face with these, but I think they're going to be good.
Deal.
All right. So the first one to get you warmed up. So what is one silly OCD thing that you have that you're willing to admit to?
Nice. That's a good question. Man, I wish my players were here. I think that they probably have some that drive me crazy. I don't know. So the secret is that I'm actually really type B in everything in my life except for how I run my program. And so I think maybe the one, I don't know if it's silly or not. I actually probably would be offended if it really is, but the thing that drives me the most insane is talking to nobody, like in a group text or in a group message, or if you say something and you don't get a response back. I think that's why I could never be like a preacher, because on like a random Sunday morning during the time change day, like people are just like so tired and you don't get the amens and I just need a thumbs up. Like, just give me a double tap thumbs up. Like, I got you, coach. But that drives me nuts without like responses. I was on an adult softball team this past spring because I'm old and because I still want to relive the glory days. And thankfully I wasn't the organizer, but I felt so bad for our team captain because he would be like, let me know if you're going to make the game tonight. And there would be like nothing. Stuff like, I'll be there, guy. like you and me, you play short, I'll play second, and we'll just hope that somebody's there to throw the ball. But like, it's an amazing thing, and it is crazy to me just that people don't respond. So, but that would be my number one, is just the response stuff. But yeah, otherwise I'm really back.
I would have to totally agree with that. That's one of mine. I have a very long laundry list of OCD things. But it's that I know you read it and you just refuse to respond. To me, that's just a physical decision that I'm not going to respond to you, because you can respond. Like you said, a thumbs up, just something other than the read receipt. And my son goes through that on Twitter, or X. He'll message a coach that just followed him or responded to him, and then he responds back. They've seen it, and then nothing. Never hears another word. You're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, the social media recruiting is super hard, but like just in general, like we do our best here to really respond to everybody, but man, it's quite the job, but it's an important one. Especially when you're going through the process and like once the kids get on our campus, Like they know that I responded to them. And so that gets to come back our way during the process. But man, yeah, it's not easy, but it does say something about you for sure.
It does. It's respect. It's respect for the other person that, hey, they took the time to reach out. And like you said, it is very difficult, the volume of messages that I'm sure that you receive. That's a lesson to all of us who don't get the volume of recruits sending things in, is take the time to respond to somebody, especially Coach Huebner, so he doesn't flip out on you.
Right.
Okay, the next one. So what book, podcast, or movie has had the biggest impact on you lately?
Ooh, lately is a really important word.
And if you want to go overall, that's fine too. I just thought some people are like, oh, I don't know, there's too many to choose from.
Oh no, there's definitely not. Um, I think, okay, so overall, I find myself kind of floating between two places. So, The Man Watching is a book by Anson Dorrance, and it's, I think, still to this day, the best book on coaching young women of excellence that's ever been written. And it especially talks about like how young women are incredibly competitive and they are incredibly athletic and they are incredibly capable. And those things manifest themselves differently than they do in men. And you just have to try. Like you just have to try to understand differently. And he talks about like, I mean, I think that he's probably the father of modern analytics in sports other than baseball, because baseball's been doing analytics in some form or fashion for, yeah, since the A's. So since Billy Beane. But so I think that that book is really impactful. The first chapter of the book of basketball is the best story on sports I've ever read. Bill Simmons writes this book. If you're not a basketball nerd like me, then you won't love the book. But the first chapter is really like, man, it's called The Disease of More. And it's a combination between a take that Pat Riley, because that's his idea, the disease of more, you win and then everybody needs or wants more. And then Isaiah Thomas from the Pistons commenting on Pat Riley from the Lakers, this idea and how it really affected the bad boy Pistons in 89, 90, 99, 91, and how that really was like the downfall of the Pistons and then the rise of Jordan. And so I think I think it's the best story on team sports and why role acceptance and role clarity is so critical. And so I actually reread that before every season because I think that it's that good for coaches to just remember like how nuanced that part of the job is. Recently, what's been affecting me has been what's going on in the Middle East. My family is Jewish by heritage and by culture and by belief, and nuance and understanding the details and understanding the difference between the leadership and the people, both on the Israeli side and on the Iranian side and on the Gaza side and on the Lebanese side and everybody in between. And then what our government is doing or not doing and then not doing, and then like how we're going through those things. Like I always kind of read these things through the lens of like, we may not feel it as coaches, but our players are doing the same thing when we're talking, trying to figure out exactly what do we mean. And like when we leave like a cliffhanger sentence, what does that do to people? And when we just take the easy way out and sort of like yada, yada, yada our way, I think that like it leaves room for guesswork in a way that becomes dangerous. And like, obviously coaching a volleyball team or coaching a football team or whatever, it's not as intrinsically life dangerous, life threatening, but we do forget because it becomes so routine for us how like one bad coach day can be a bad player year or a bad player lifetime taste in their mouth about that sport and they're done playing. And that's like the scariest thing for me. And so like minding our words and being really thoughtful about like how do we finish the message so that we make sure that the message sent is the message received. Like that's been really affecting me because everybody's got their own, algorithm. And like that's true not just on like the social media side, but also on the life side as we like filter through our own results. And we got to really work at it to make sure that we come up the right way. So that's been heavy on my heart daily, but important.
Yeah, and that last part that you shared, that goes back to what you had shared in the first conversation we had about assuming everyone's trying their best. And it's like we owe that tail end because like you said is they didn't mean to hit it out of bounds. It went out of bounds. Now complete the sentence because those situations happen where you just pull somebody out and then you never explain to them fully what happened. At human nature, we're immediately going to usually, at least I do, the extreme negative of it. Of they think I'm terrible. They didn't tell me anything. They don't like me. What happened? And then next thing you know is it just spirals into just terrible, terrible imagination.
Yeah, it's super dangerous, and it's like it's personally dangerous, it's professionally dangerous, and it's like intimacy related dangerous. Like when you're assuming those things about other people, or they're assuming them about yourself, and like and it's human nature, like you said, to like go down the rabbit hole. Um, and man, that's like the most beautiful version of a team, and it's when like somebody can be telling you and like I'm venting, and then they start venting and you're like, wait, now you're down a rabbit hole. Like before you were venting, now you're down a rabbit hole. Like this was real up until this moment. And like now you're making assumptions that aren't helping the situation. And so like we spend a lot of time on that. And like we talk all the time about preparing for that like possibility of the negative with how you're going to respond before the negative shows up, because otherwise it's too late. It's just too late.
Yeah, it's that Mike Tyson quote is that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the nose. And one of the things that I talked about in my book was boxers are prepared to get punched in the nose. They know that's going to happen. So they're not surprised by that. They know if they get hit in the nose, their eyes are going to water. What do? You got to make sure you protect yourself. And it's the same thing in life. And what I like about how you coach and how you do things is these are all transferable skills that will help these young ladies in life as wives if they choose to get married, as mothers if they choose to have, children, and then just great members of community of being able to prepare for those things.
Yeah. And as coaches, we have to do the same thing. Like, cause we will encounter negativity that we don't want to pass on and pay forward to our athletes, because they will be who you are. I mean, that's the truth of it. Like, if you want to know after 3 or 4 years what a coach is like, just talk to one of their like captains or one of their kids and be like, wait, so this person is inevitably going to be like the person who's leading the program, and that's going to give you all the insight that you need when you're applying for jobs. Like, just talk to the janitor. Be like, hey, how is it here? Like, oh, it's been here 20 years. Like, oh, really? How is that? Like, they have an opinion, and those people are inevitably better equipped to answer truthfully than the person who's trying to consider their own existence. That's a harder job. So
Yeah, I like it. Okay. We'll skip this one. What is something that most people don't know about you that would surprise them?
I think people don't know that I'm musical. Um, it wouldn't surprise any of the people that like have been around me for a little bit. It doesn't take very long. I'm not shy, just in general. Like I'm always singing, humming something. But I grew up playing piano and being in musicals. I was in a glee club in high school called Just the Guys before Glee was cool and popular. Um, and like I am pretty qualified to report that like the Pitch Perfect movies, obviously the later ones are just like basically made up, but the first one, that's like real life. Like those things are all real. The battles and the competitions and the making music with your mouth and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's something that has carried with me. And even like when I'm on campus, I usually walk and talk wherever I go, and I try to end up between calls. We have a upstairs room in Upper Wamberg that has a piano in it. So between calls, I try to live there, just reset and kind of move forward from there. So
That's cool. That's really cool. What I guess what I don't know if it's position, but what do you normally sing? What
I
tenor,
use
baritone?
bass. So in choirs and stuff, I used to sing bass, but now I just sing averagely, whatever the melody is. So,
No, that's really cool. Well, now we've given everybody a glimpse into Coach Huebner
yeah,
and
absolutely.
what they may not have known. That's really cool. Well, Coach, just like I mentioned to you before, so if there's any new listeners today, is I started Pathways to Greatness podcast 3 years ago now, just to bring people on like yourself to talk about, one, what is their definition of greatness and what are the pathways that they take to get there, because everybody has different definitions, even though they're similar. And definitely everybody has different pathways to get there, none of which are linear. They're just like we've talked today. There's ups and downs and twists and turns and hidden little secret rooms that, that we may or may
Mhm.
not want to share,
Right.
but they're there. And ultimately, I just don't want people to quit. I want to educate them with tactics and skills to do that. And so bringing people on like you to share your wisdom is extremely helpful. So I know I've asked you this before, is what is your definition of greatness? But I'll ask it to you again. So if there's any variation that you may have today.
Hmm. Man, I don't know. I mean, I don't remember what I said exactly last time, but for me, greatness has always been the ability to do normal things, ordinary things in an extraordinary way, which is come from Tony Dungy's book Uncommon. Um, and I think a little, he talks more like common things in an uncommon way. But I just think that we convolute the idea that great is big. And the big things they're cool and they're important. We took a team to Brazil and it was big and it was cool and it was important. But nobody ever talks about like when we took a team there, like getting on the plane, funding the fundraising, spending $100,000 or whatever we spent. Nobody ever talks about the big things. They talk about like the bus ride between Sao Paulo and Rio, which was a sleeper bus that was 6 hours long. And we played a match, got on the bus, drove, got off the bus, played another match. And like, they talk about that. They talk about morning sunrises. They talk about one of our players had a birthday and everybody like literally just went up and saw the morning sunrise on the last day for her birthday. And like, the greatness piece is always the little things consistently done over time. And I do think that even in the recruiting world that I'm in, like we really kind of get it messed up that like the biggest thing that you can do is the most important thing. And really like that's the differentiator for me. It's like the kids that are consistently doing the little things that we see, the kids picking up the water bottles, the kids checking their teammates, who are always working or always doing flag or always like doing the R2. Nobody wants to be R2. Those little things, like those are people that you can count on. And that's the people you need in your foxhole. And so I've been in this foxhole idea now for the better part of the last month. And I know this is not a new thing, but I just think like you gotta have the right people in there with you. And those are the people who never forget to check the battery. They never forget to check the positioning. They never forget to check the alarm. Those are the people that end up doing big things because then they're trustworthy in these big moments. So, yeah, that's, I think fairly similar, but that's where I would land again.
No, that's great. It's very similar because again, I know you mentioned the book Uncommon. I'm a huge fan of that and Tony Dungy. So that's why I remembered it. So along with what you shared is one of the questions I actually wrote down goes with what you just talked about is really from your perspective, and we've talked about social media. I don't think it would be foreign to anyone to know that social media has this whole thing about talent, especially around sports.
Right.
You have whatever reel that you can put, you have a highlight tape, you have all these things that can make anyone look absolutely amazing. But it comes down to, like you said, character. So for you as a coach, that this could relate to other people in their life, is that really, what is the importance do you put on character versus talent?
Mm. Yeah, I think that the talent piece is the easiest part. I don't think that people miss on talent very often, because it's the easiest to see, it's the easiest to identify, it's the easiest to fall in love with, it's the easiest to hope about. Um, and I think it's really interesting because like it's a very worldly thing to value. James is really clear when he talks about like perseverance creates character and character creates hope, right? And so like when we're thinking about when we want to build these programs, right? We're all trying to win national championships, conference championships, whatever it is. That requires a certain amount of faith and it requires a certain amount of hope. And biblically, the Bible says, build your hope on character. And that character should come through some sort of perseverance. It's earned. It's not like given. And so there's room for every type of human on a volleyball team. There's not a lot of room for like quiet volleyball player on the court. You got to be able to call the ball and do the little things. But like there's room for an introvert and an extrovert and a funny kid and a way out of like can't pay attention but like can lock in for volleyball kid. And there's like the kid who's marginally inappropriate and the kid who's like overly intense, and like all of these people need to coexist on a team because that's life. What I've found is that there's really only two characteristics that are like lockdown predictors of future success. And those two things are gratefulness and resilience. And I think they're totally hand in hand. I think it's almost impossible to quit when you're appreciative of where you are. And I think it's almost impossible to not be grateful when you've worked so hard to stay in it. And those people appreciate the process. Like we talk about being process oriented. I think that that's like a tagline that's like, I have recruits say it to me all the time. Like I really care about the process. And I'm like, that's awesome. What does that mean? Or what is that producing in you? Because that's the point. But I think for some people, it's a really good subtitle, but these two things, like these are predictors of future success. These are predictors of, I can tell you to do better. And you can be like, okay, I could do better. Thanks for telling me. That person has a shot. A person in my role who can be grateful for the job that I currently have, resilient in the job because it's going to come with ups and downs, I've got a shot. But I have to put my hope in character. I can't put my hope in talent in any way. There's obviously some like baseline for this stuff from a talent perspective, but it's literally the most played junior sport in the country, volleyball. So I just don't think that we miss on talent too often. We more miss on the ingredients that it takes to be successful. And how do we flesh that out? And how do we use like, our spidey senses, and what questions do we ask, or what questions are we like asking that like really matter? And I think that that's kind of like, that's been my biggest thing, especially in this cycle where like it feels like everything's sped up. And I think that's going to be like this for, until the rules change again. So probably 4 more months or something. But like, I think everything's sped up. And I think there's a lot of pressure right now on kids to feel like they should be committing. And it's up to us as coaches to prove our resilience and to prove our gratefulness so that on the hard days, the athletes know that we will be with them because we're resilient and because we're glad to be a part of it. So those are the only two characteristics. I've really, really, really tried to be as succinct and as clear as possible in the recruiting process, especially as we build this program. And yeah, it's been not difficult to narrow down, but like to get the right words, I think that that's been important. And biblically, I think it lands true.
Okay, for those who have made it this far, which is great, that means you're halfway through. We were cut short because I lost power for about 4 hours right in the middle of the conversation that you just heard from. So we're going to do our best to pick up from where we left. So if you're watching, you'll see that Coach Huebner and I both are wearing different outfits. He actually has a great haircut. And I never have hair, so that's why I wear a hat, because the shine blinds the guests. But anyways, Coach, in what you just shared was really the how you formulate what you look for in a recruit and in a player, and that was around gratefulness and resilience, which are two wonderful words. And I also like that you talked about biblically. That's two of the most important things that we can focus on. And so for me, the thing that I've always struggled with is conveying what I'm good at. And it comes down from the difference between humility and pride. And I just recorded an episode recently about pride and how I've always struggled with that, even though I've been extremely prideful in moments, which is not biblical by any means. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you suggest people, young people, because it's hard for them anyways to formulate just about anything, but to express that they have gratefulness and resilience?
I mean, it's great. I think for anything that we do, it comes back to practice. And you're going to stink at it before you're good at it. And so, in order to be good at gratefulness, you have to practice being grateful. And so just like setting up habits of trying to really be brave enough to tell people that you're grateful for them, not just that you like them, and not just that they did a great job, or like that you love that Instagram post by resharing it, or whatever it is. But like, there's a really big difference between being somebody's hype man and being grateful for them and communicating that. And so we talk a lot. So in our gym, we have an intentions and a gratitudes board. And it's required for every person to go through and write their intentions for practice, and then write what something they're grateful for. And for us, at the beginning last year, it was tough. Like, it was my dog. I'm grateful for, good breakfast. Like, that can be something, but why? And like we've like really practiced, and the beginning of this journey down our trip to be like a grateful program last year was like arduous and shallow, and it wasn't because they didn't mean to be more, they just didn't know how, really. And I think we're much better at, like, the Hebrews, as long as it's a day called today, encourage one another, than we are at like, hey, thank you. Like like, they will know us by the way we love one another. Like, the first one is easier in today's culture. And so practice means, like, you got to be brave enough to tell somebody, and then you have to be like doing it regularly. And so for us, like, we do it, we use the practice gym as an opportunity to practice the gratefulness. And I think it bleeds into their lives. I mean, I think our kids are incredible at like exploring West Palm Beach, and not just thinking of the beach, but thinking of like, what can we do at the farmers market? And what can we do with volunteerism? And what can I do to get involved with the local community? But like, the habit of gratefulness is really cool. And it does take a lot of bravery, because it's so uncommon to share that with somebody. And it's very vulnerable, because what if they don't care? And that's a very like, hey, that's like when somebody says, I love you, and the other person says, thank you. Like, that could be dangerous. So we really think about, how do we approach this, and how do we create an environment where that risk is worth whatever the payback is.
I like that you talked about the importance of practice, and that you model the way by having them do it in practice to where it's a safe environment that, again, like you said, will transfer over to their life. But also, it's got to change like their game day performance throughout expressing.
It does. I think it will. I don't think it did. So like, I'll just be right now, I don't think that we were always good enough, but I do think that it started to affect our
consistency in our behavior as the year went on. So like the spring, by the time that we got to spring, we played a lot better in the spring than we did in the fall. And that's, to be expected because, it's our first year with them. But I think this year I'll actually be able to answer that. But I really think that it like created more consistent daily habits where the lows weren't so low. And because the high is the same, like everybody's potential is their potential. You can't actually raise your average by raising your potential. You can't get better than you could be. That's one of the things, like if somebody asks me like, what's a word that you hate, or like, what's a pet peeve? I don't like the word overachiever. I just think like the sad reality of our lives is that we're all basically underachievers, and we can do our best to achieve what God created us to do. That's the best that we can do with maximum effectiveness and passion. So you have to raise your floor. Like if you want to be a better average human, you got to raise your floor. And so I think that stuff we got to see a little bit more in the spring, where the preparation was better, the ability to be resilient was better, the ability to like shake off some mistakes and stuff like that. Sydney Corbett is one of my favorite humans, but also she played beach and indoor at PBA. So I didn't get her for the beach season because that's not my job. But when she came back to the indoor, she was like, we had been practicing some gratefulness stuff, and she was much, much, much more capable of shaking off some errors and staying in it as a second semester freshman. And it was like exponentially better. And I'm sure that it was a function of the beach being a little bit more, everybody's looking at you, you have to, but then also just like the steady practice of gratefulness. And she's really good at it. So I think that like really did sort of settle her in a way that's going to prove really helpful for us. She goes into her sophomore year.
No, that's awesome. And one of the things while you were talking that I was thinking about is, again, last year was your first year with the program. So that's always difficult and challenging because you're also bringing with you, or not bringing with you, they're bringing with them the past, whatever that may have been, whether it was good or bad. They're bringing those expectations and laying them at your feet, whether they are warranted or not. So as a new coach, and you talk about resilience and gratefulness and vulnerability, how do you express and set the example for them and still maintain a position of authority? Because that's also, as a parent, we have to balance that as well.
Yeah, man, if I was better at it, we'd be better at it. So I know that that's like that's the challenge. And as a human, I think like it's unpopular and I think misunderstood that like vulnerability is bad. Like I just, you can see it in everything that we do and like whatever popular culture looks like. But for me, I always tell people, like, if you want to know what kind of leader somebody is, find out how they take responsibility for being wrong. That's it. Like, are they wrong? First of all, because if they're never wrong, then not a leader. Because they're either not doing something risky enough that's brave enough to actually matter, or they're too arrogant to learn from their mistakes. So either one isn't really super helpful. And then the second piece to me is just like, I think that as a male, especially coaching female sports, I think when you are vulnerable, what you feel is vulnerability and what the receiver feels is bravery and trust. And I think that that's a really, like, all the time we think about all the negative things that could happen with communication, right? Like I say something one way and I think I did a good job, and then it's received a different way. But this is one of those things where, like, when you communicate what feels like vulnerability to you, what's being received from the player is like, oh my gosh, this coach trusts me. This coach believes that I'm worthy of one of the challenges in his or her life. And that ties the bond closer. And like, that's why I think as coaches, sometimes we like probably overmanage in some ways, where we're like, you guys got to like get together and you got to be vulnerable and you got to like And so sometimes we try to like orchestrate these like fake relationship stuff. But I think the way to do it is like just get in there and remember that like what you say is not always what's received. And most of the time it's not even close, just in general, positive or negative. But there's two sides to every coin. And sometimes when you take accountability, you apologize, or when you say, hey, I'm going through a tough time, or can you pray for me? Or like, this has been a really big struggle in my life right now. I think that like it gives permission to the team to like see that in practice. And I think that there's like, I always try to remind myself that like feelings aren't facts, and that doesn't just apply to my players. It applies to me also. And so just because my feeling is like, oh man, I'm gonna put myself out there, I'm gonna say something hard, but like that's my feeling. But the fact of what happens is like we love to help people, especially as Christians. We love to help people. And so like when I place my own feelings of vulnerability above the needs of the group, I don't let them help me, and I don't let them kind of come around me and support me in a way that like gives them agency and adulthood. Because ultimately that's my job. It's like get them to a place where when they walk out of here, they know how to do it, And if I hide all the things from them, and I don't really give them the chance, and that also says, I don't think you're ready. So do I want adults? If so, I'm going to have to be an adult myself and treat them like such.
Well, that's painful that we have to do what we preach.
It's awful, man. It's awful.
Yeah, it's easy as a parent, as a coach, as a leader in the workplace to know what to do and to be able to tell people what to do. But then when you're forced to do it yourself, it's difficult. And I'm curious, again, along those same lines is balancing that level of authority to where you're vulnerable, you want to share things. There's also boundaries that you have to keep and to protect. So how do you balance that?
Man, this is one. So boundaries, I think, are like, I always tell people like boundaries are love in a lot of ways. Like you have to choose them, and you have to like constantly choose them. And boundaries, like we always talk about boundaries, I think, as people, and we think about them as like relational boundaries and stuff like that. But there's like 1,000 ways where boundaries is an important idea in your life. And like our pastor this past weekend was talking about like his roommate in college had this phrase that he would say, like, they can, I cannot. Like, I don't care what they can do, but I cannot do. And like, that's a boundary in and of itself. And so, what I would push back on in the question is that your position and your platform and your power are somehow tied to your authority. And I think that like my position and my platform and the power that I operate in is tied entirely and wholly to the Holy Spirit who lives in my heart. And when I start to attribute those three things to my authority, the title that's given to me by man and my boss in this university, then I've taken something that is incredibly powerful and incredibly real and dynamic and life-changing, and I've minimized it. And I've actually decreased my position and decreased my platform. I've decreased my power. And so when I think about like maintaining authority, which I very, very, very rarely do, I think more about like, if you're an adult and you want something and you tell me you want it and I give you the tools to do it and you don't do it, it has actually nothing to do with my position, power, and platform. And I think that that's the hardest thing as a young coach, as a player, to like really understand is that like all you can do is create opportunities. And then you also shouldn't be mad when people don't achieve or lean into those things, because that's their choice for them. And as a coach, like sometimes we forget that like the kids just want to play ball. Like it doesn't matter what the sport is. They want to be on the field, on the court, in the gym, whatever it is, pitch. I just like saying the word pitch, so I felt like I had to get in there. Like that's the best punishment. And it's not a real punishment. You're just like, hey, I asked you to do X, Y, and Z, and then you didn't, so now you can't play. That's so much easier than being like, well, I really value serving, and then every time we serve, we're going to do 10 burpees if we miss a serve, and we're going to count them after the game, and da-da-da. No, it's so easy. You just be like, hey, I can't put you in the game. I'm sorry. This is what I need. This is what it is. And I think like the vulnerability aspect and all of those pieces, like maintaining authority, like people who act in a way to maintain authority, put their own worldly title ahead of the well-being of themselves and their students and their athletes and their family and their friends and all those things. And so like we see it a lot with like captain titles for players. That's like the big one we see. Like we try really hard to use like other words like leadership, group, and council and stuff like that. That's become very popular now. But like the reality is, it's like nothing means anything if it's given by a human. And so like once we really fully understand this, then like you can just do the best that you can and you're not worried about maintaining authority. And there are certain standards that are non-negotiables. And if you're outside of that, then I'm sorry, but I already made this choice a long, long, long time ago, before it was hard. I have to follow through because that's who I am. So yeah, I don't think that I actually answered your question at all because I dodged the entire thing, but that is what I feel about it. I think that like the biggest thing that we can do is just remember that, you know, if you're coaching to be looked up to, you're wrong. If you're coaching to have authority, you're wrong. If you're coaching to maintain authority, like you're not helping as much as you could. And effectiveness is the difference maker, not title.
Well, and to go back, and you did answer it, because it comes down to limits that we put on ourselves and that we should and govern ourselves. So it's like a governor that we have to protect. And the example that you used goes right in line with the pride example that I used in that episode, where as a corporate leader, I used to want to rain my wisdom down on people. And I was offended when they didn't take my suggestions, because I'm like, well, I'm in this position, you're in that position. I'm trying to help you get into this position. So why wouldn't you listen to me? And my heart was in the right place, but boy, it was coming from the wrong direction. Like I wanted to help them, but it was more to elevate me. So back to your point of elevate me is like, yeah, I've been able to do this for people, and this is the result. So it was more self-serving than I wanted it to be, or even that I knew that it was, until I started looking back. And that comes from, again, maturity, wisdom, a lot of self-reflection. The other thing that was, I really liked when you talked about how to reward or punish incorrect behavior. And there's a book called Whale Done. Did you ever read that one by any chance?
I haven't, no.
So it was written by one of the killer whale trainers at SeaWorld. And so he talked about, he's like, okay, I'm going to have orca in this tank. If I start whacking it every time it doesn't jump through the hoop, well, I'm going to risk losing a limb and dying forever, potentially.
Right.
Well, I guess there's only one way to die, but, or they love to play so much. If they don't perform the way I want them to, then I just put them back in their pen and they don't get to play anymore. And so I like that. It's the carrot versus the stick of just, you reward good behavior, and the lack of behavior just says, I can't put you in there. You haven't been reliable. You haven't been doing what you need to do. And then it comes to that explanation, because people just want to know why. Like if you just got pulled and you don't know why, then our imagination takes over, and it's never a good place when the imagination takes over. That's right. Well, yeah. And I think that, you know, I tell my kids all the time, like, you said something that I'm going to take forever, which is you know, my heart is in the right place, but it's coming from the wrong direction. And so that feeds into something that I tell my athletes all the time. Like, most of the time, whatever error you're making is a 3% error, not a 97% error. And like, you've been playing volleyball since you were 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever it is. So you get to college and you've been playing for a decade, you know, and like you hit a ball out, and a lot of us as coaches, we want to like flex our coaching muscles and be like, let's start at the beginning. Let's fix this approach. And like,
most of the time it's a 3% error. You just like turn your hand at the wrong way, last second, the wrong way. You meant the right thing. I know we talked about this last time, but like you probably were trying to do the right thing. You just messed it up, and you messed it up by 3%, which then meant it was wrong. And that's like the nature of most sports. Most sports are like dealing with failure, right? And like a lot of times when we have captains or leaders and they're coming to talk to us and we're trying to mentor them, like they tell us all the things that they're doing. And I think that sentence that you said, like my heart is in the right place, but it's coming from the wrong direction. That's something that I try to really like capture with this 3% idea, which is like, you're not wrong, but you still have to figure out how you get what you mean to be received. Otherwise, you're just not wrong. And like, that doesn't mean that you're a leader. You just can be like, well, I'm 1-for-1, but you know, and I think as coaches, we love, this is one that we love, and I'm guilty of this. The scouting report is right, guys. Like all the things that we said are going to happen are happening. We need like, but like being right is not the goal. Like, and I think that's the part that's really hard is like pride and ego and coaches and like, you know, this is my life. Like I'm really good at scouting reports and I work hard at it and I have a good memory for things. And so like I can see something, I can remember it forever. And like that is definitely a source of like, it doesn't matter how good I know it. If I can't convey it in a way that we can execute on it, then it's useless for me to know it. And I think that that's like, you know, we sometimes forget that the messaging is usually more important than the message. And so like, we have to like really lock into it. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with me because I'm going to take that and use it in concert with my 3% conversation I have all the time. Like my daughter, she's downstairs right now working on pitching softball, right? And she told me that she throws more strikes. We're learning how to like full turn twice now. She was like, I throw more strikes when I don't do it twice. And I was like, well, that's because you've only done it 3 times total. And this is your like 3rd time ever trying it. You're going to have to make more mistakes before you see it get better. And I say this stuff to my players, my adult players all the time. And like the first person to make a mistake is the first person to learn. And usually the mistake isn't even that big. It's just the result we didn't like.
Yeah. And it's also, we talked about earlier, the baggage that you bring with you of when you've made a mistake, how others have responded to your mistake. And that's what you carry. At least that's what I carry. I can't say that's what you carry, but I know that when you have a mistake, one, we all want to be perfect, but it's impossible. So we've set an unrealistic expectation for ourselves. But through that, it's how we respond. So back to your word resilience, when you respond well to a mistake, that's where, like you said, you start to learn because then you realize my identity is not in the mistake. Right. The problem is we put our identity in the points. You know, every kill we make, every great play we make, I made that play. But when we make a mistake, many of us dismiss it, but deep down, we still identify with, I'm a terrible player. I'm a terrible parent. I made too many mistakes. These different things when you have to move past those as quickly as we have to move past the victories as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super good. I agree.
So one of the things that I wrote down when I was thinking about, getting back in touch with you and finishing this was really around the idea of identifying gratefulness and resilience. And you're in that recruiting season as well. So what are some questions that you ask that helps you identify gratefulness and resilience?
Yeah. So some of the questions are internal, like when we go watch people play. And I think that recruiting coordinators are getting really good at teaching that as college coaches, there are things we know and we don't know. Like I don't know the score. I don't know the matches. I don't know if it's gold or flight 12B. Like You know, the app says go to this court at this time and, you know, Sally's going to be playing. So I go there and I watch Sally and I decide. So the things that we watch like that, the question is like, once we identify that the person is a volleyball player that could compete in our league or in our division or at our school, right? Then the next series of times that we're watching for errors. Like, what kind of errors are you making? Are you making errors that are going to eventually be useful at the collegiate level? You know, or are you just like, you know, making errors that are high school errors, which is fine too. And like, we just need to note, like, this is something that you're going to need to learn. And like, making collegiate errors means that when you get to college, you're going to have practice already at the stuff that you're going to be learning, you know? And so, and that's thing one. And then like, when you make those errors, what do you do on the next play? Are we automatically now in safe mode? That's my number one, like, red flag is like, I've made one error, I'm in safe mode. You know, and in volleyball, that's like, you know, we're tipping or we're just like, we're not trying to score unless it's a perfect set. And then the other type of errors that I'm looking for are when the person next to you makes an error and what your response is. Like, serve receive ball, it's me and, you know, and Lou's next to me and Lou passes the ball and it goes forever away. And like, what do I do? Am I like, you know, and there's lots of right answers here. Sometimes the right answer is like, you know, hey, you got that, like, do better. Sometimes the right answer is like, you're having a hard day, like, I got you, move a little bit that way, I'm gonna help out a little bit more, you know. But just like, what are we doing and how many moves do we have when we have errors, you know? So I think that that's like one of the self-answer questions. And I think that's actually probably more transferable than answering a question correctly on a recruit call. So I don't ask a ton of those questions. I do firmly believe that kids who've never failed before are the riskiest recruits when they go to college. So like, if you've never made a second team, if you've never, you know, some tough in your life has never happened, if you've come from, you know, all the things, but you didn't have a heartbreaking loss or experience or whatever, I think that can get really challenging. And so I do ask pretty regularly as we get further along in the recruiting process, like, what's the thing you're most proud of, challenge that you're most proud of overcoming? And like, that way they don't have to tell me their whole life story, you know. That's tough. And it's a tough thing that we do, but you know, and everybody's most challenging thing is different. And so I try really hard to not judge if I think your most challenging thing was worthy enough. But like, because it's just to you. Like, if you've overcome a challenge to you and you knew you've achieved that, then like that's oftentimes enough. It's not up to me to be like, well, that's not really that challenging. Like, maybe it isn't, but you have a blueprint for something that was really real to you and your feelings matter and they're valid. So I ask that question pretty often. And then the gratefulness question, I never ask. I mean, the closest thing that I ask is like, tell me something about the way that you were raised that you're going to carry with you into college. And sometimes I get like oh, I just love my parents, I'm so thankful. You know, like, sometimes it's adjacent. But I care about the kids that send the follow-up texts that's like, hey, thanks so much for talking. It was great to have that conversation with you. Or the coach who follows up for their player and was like, you know, hey, I just talked to so-and-so and she had a great time talking to you on the phone. You know, she said X, Y, and Z. And I think that like, knowing that somebody's positively gossiping about me, I think encourages me to create good opportunities for them. And I also know that like, that's how they're going to talk about me when they get here. So I ask almost no questions about like gratefulness in that space. And I do like really pay close attention to that. And I also watch post game if I've got nothing to do after a game. Like I pay attention to like who does what when, and how quickly does mom show up? How quickly does dad show up? Does the player talk to the coach first if they have something to say? Like these little things are just, they're big things to me. And like I don't know, maybe this is something in my life, but my dad never let me leave the field really without saying thank you to my coach. And like that'll be true for my kids no matter what. And like now I almost don't even need to ask. Like my 6-year-old, he finished playing t-ball. He's 5. At this time he's 5, and he comes straight off the field. And my 11-year-old at the time is like, Cash, you need to say thank you to your coach. It's like, yes, sir, you do. But I think that's like, those are the little things that like we learn about the players that aren't sport related, because once you decide that a kid can play your sport, then the recruiting begins.
Yeah, and there was so much gold in that. So I encourage everybody to rewind it and listen, because the one thing that I really hung on was when you talked about living in safe mode, and how so many of us, and when you said it, it hit me like a ton of bricks, that I lived decades in safe mode just because of fear of not messing up. So by living in safe mode, I missed out on a ton. And that would be what I would challenge the audience as they listen is, because of a mistake that you made, are you living in safe mode right now? Are you not living to fulfill the level of achievement that God has designed you to do? So like Coach had shared, are you underachieving because you're operating in safe mode? Safe mode is called safe mode for a reason. It's not like when your computer goes into safe mode, it even tells you not all functions are available. So when you operate that way, it's the same thing. So there's just so many in that, and I'm trying to keep it narrow, because we could continue to chase rabbits and do this for hours more. So I have a feeling we're gonna have the third episode at some point as well. So when you look at, I'll come from a parent perspective, and we'll start to, I don't know if you see my new kit, one of the new kittens has climbed the fence and roaming my office.
There you go.
But he definitely doesn't operate. She doesn't operate in safe mode by any means. But as a parent, like with children who want to play in sports, we've seen it all over the place. Parents ruin everything. So what would be what's advice that you give a parent who has children who are looking to play in college and maybe involved in that recruiting process right now? Like, what should we do?
Oh man. Well, I think something that, so when I used to run like youth sport clubs, right? So before we moved to Florida, we always basically for the last 13 years, my wife and I had a volleyball club at basically every place that we lived, right? We started our own club. And something that I would say all the time is my biggest like coaching ick, if you will, is when parents rob opportunities for growth from their own children. And there are certain things that I think became a little bit blown out of proportion, like don't ever talk to a college coach. I don't think that that's true. I think if the coach ever uses the word family, then the family needs to be involved. Maybe that's a personal thing, but we love that word in college sports for sure. But I think as parents, I think using the recruiting process as an opportunity to explain to your son or daughter what adult life really looks like, I think is really important. I was on a Zoom the other day with a parent who I literally got off the phone and called my associate head coach and was like, I love this person, this man. He was so good, because I would say something and I would say X, da, 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 and then the dad would like not, so then she would respond, and then the dad would be like, okay. And then he'd be like, hold on, coach. I just want to like clarify for my daughter. And then he would sort of like translate into adult world the information, and he was like, not this, coach said this. So that means that like he's going to do this and this and this and this for you. That also means that if you want that respect from him, you also need to do this and this and this and this for him. So this is your opportunity to demonstrate that you're willing to meet him in a place that he's already been willing to meet you at. So go ahead and, like in the business world, we're talking about, he was so good. And then we would talk about something else and he'd be like, okay, so coach just said this. That means that it's important for you to consider if this happens or this happens or this happens, then we've got other spaces that need to be considered, And so I think that like, it's really important for us to understand, like, how do we translate this information from coach speak to recruit speak, and then also back into like, what does this mean for the real world,
And I love him, and I've never even met him, just by your example, because to me, that shows that he understands, not that his child is incapable of understanding, but they're not a position in age to have the wisdom to be able to translate that from what you said into what it really means. And that's where I feel like so many adults, we miss the mark because we expect our kids and our young people to think like an adult when
Right.
it's not possible. Their brains are not formulated enough. And there's a great book called The Teenage Brain. So if you like to read, I think you would really enjoy that one, because it just talks about the physiological challenges that create the gap of going, well, what in the world were you thinking? Like, how many times do we say that, or has that been said to us? And it's because they weren't, because they're not capable, because their brain's not formulated enough.
Yeah.
But, so I appreciate everything that you shared. And again, I want to be very respectful because you were able to reschedule me and finish this thing out. So what would be something you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Oh man. I think that, thinking about all the stuff that we've been talking about today, and just like feels like we really settled on like resilience and gratefulness. And I think that one of the things that we don't talk through enough when it comes to like how to modify your own behavior and how to grow and how to learn is how to be fully honest with yourself. And so like when we're being resilient, we should be fully honest with ourselves. Like, that's a really incredible thing. Like, it's always easier to not, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, it's easier to not. And so every time that you demonstrate resilience, you should create in a pride and a sense of pride and like for yourself and self-respect. Like, when you do those things, you're creating habits that are going to serve you really well into the future. And sometimes, and I would say most of the time in women's sports, but like we manage to, value when we don't achieve something at a higher rate than when we do achieve something, because it stings more. And like, I think elite competitors, we kind of all feel a little similar. Like we hate to lose sometimes more than we love to win. But like there's pretty much equal value in losing and winning, because it's one game, or it's 1 point, or it's one contact, or whatever it is. And like, it's important to like be honest with yourself about your successes and your failures. And you can't have one without the other. Like, if you're only honest with yourself about your failures and you're not honest with yourself about your successes, you're building up an arsenal of reasons to not be resilient. And then same thing with gratefulness. Like, if you are walking out of a situation where you were really successful and you're not being honest with yourself about all the people and all the things and all the situations that needed to take place in order for you to be able to achieve whatever it is that you've achieved, then you're really missing out on the opportunity to be gratefulness because to show gratefulness because you're not able to identify like all of the help that you had along the way. And then when you need to be helpful to somebody else, you're not going to be ready because you've never recognized it in another human. And like, that's what teams need. They need these like real, true, honest answers. And I think that like when we're building up self-worth and self-respect and just like team behavior, it's really common to be like the my bad is more important than the my responsibility. Like, hey, that's my responsibility. I got that. Like, or hey, that's my bad. My bad happens more than like the affirmation side of it. And I think that like it's really, really important that as teachers of young people, we appropriately encourage the things that are right over the things that are result. And I think that when we do that, then like we really create an opportunity for our young people to like survive in unsuccessful or losing circumstances in a way that's going to eventually ensure that they will be successful and have winning circumstances. And I think that that's the job. And so sometimes we spend a lot of time for like forgetting or focusing on all the negative, and then we forget all the positive. And then we try to like make it up by like overhyping somebody up because they're so negative about themselves. You're like, no, you got to find it all. Like if you want to be trustworthy, you got to find it all and you got to like live into it and you just never quit. And like, I think that that's like, I think it's really hard. And as I get older, I feel like my ability to follow through on that stuff has gotten better because my personal feelings about achievement are better set aside. And so I can be what the players need me to be on a more daily basis in that way.
Man, that was so good. And it goes back to what you shared earlier. I usually don't like to add comments after you give your final comments, but I just want to remind people about what you said about practice. So being self-aware takes practice. Being self-aware, so practice within yourself first. And I love writing down the things and that I do well and that I don't do well, to look at them just like data. It's just data on a sheet of paper that I can evaluate and move forward. And again, to reiterate what you shared is that winning, most people don't learn when they win because they become superstitious, like, well, this is the way we've always won, so this is the way we just need to continue, which is dangerous. And then it's in the losses of where you lose everything, unless you have a good leader that strips it away. And a W and an L is just an opportunity to learn either way. I love it. So Coach, I really appreciate you making time, being patient, and I'm grateful for you, not only from just the perspective of you coming back, wanting to come back on, but then wanting to come back on, I guess 2.2 or 2.1 and finish this. But just grateful for the wisdom and the words that you have to share. I get something out of it every single time. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. I think that it's so important that I do as much as I can to like flesh out my own thought processes, especially as we get ready to go into another season where like, you know, when I'm challenged to like really dive into like, what do we do and why do we do it? Every time I walk out of here with something like, oh, we don't need to do that. And like clarity and conciseness, that's not really a word I think, but that's all right. I think those are like the most powerful communicators. And so this is always so helpful to me. So I don't ever want to like take that for granted that I have the opportunity to talk about like the ideas and what we kind of work on and then learn and take something away every time. So thanks for having me again. And, I'll do this 100 times. So I think this is like the way that people get better.
Perfect. I love it. Well, hang tight a little bit. So ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Huebner. Thanks for joining us on the Pathways to Greatness podcast. We hope that today's conversation inspired you to take steps towards your own greatness. Remember, Every journey starts with a single step. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Actually, share it with 3 people that you might think it might benefit. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and carving your own path to greatness. Take care.